So how did he do it? How did Emmanuel Macron upend and redraw France's political landscape? The new president can mull over a record low turnout in the second round of legislative elections, but it's Macron's opponents who only have themselves to blame for their supporters staying home. So it's out with the old guard on both sides of the aisle, left and right. Make way instead for a party created out of thin air, a rejuvenation in more ways than one. The average age of MPs dropping more than 5 years. 48 years old is the average age now. A record 38% of female lawmakers in the next National Assembly, and a mandate, well, to reform both politics and the economy. Contrast the strong hand of France's president with Britain's hung parliament on this, the very day that formal Brexit negotiations began. How will Macron play that hand on the European stage when he has promised to push for more EU integration? Moreover, what is the secret of his success? Can it be replicated elsewhere? Today in the France 24 debate, the Macron way of winning and governing. And with us to talk about it, Romain Duperret, members of Lawyers En Marche, a group of attorneys who support Emmanuel Macron.
Attorneys, judges, lawyers.
Magistrates.
Exactly.
Thank you for being with us again.
You're welcome.
After joining us on election night. Boris Fournier, national delegate for the Socialist Party. Welcome back to the show.
Happy to be here.
Davina Frau Meggs teaches media and sociology at Paris University at La Sorbonne. Welcome back. And to Pierre Briançon, senior writer at Politico.eu. Nice to see you. The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, the hashtag F24debate. Emmanuel Macron and his allies from the centrist Modem party will boast the National Assembly's largest majority in 15 years when it convenes next week. 350 MPs out of 577. Now, that's less, of course, than the 450 that some had predicted. Still, the previous majority was socialist. They're left with, if you count their close allies, with something like 31 MPs, the center-right bloc 129, and the far-right National Front, whose candidate finished second in the presidential poll, but only with 8 lawmakers in the new parliament. The youngest freshman, when the National Assembly next week convenes, will be Tiffany de Gois, 24 years of age. She hails from Aix-les-Bains, that's in the Alps. She's put off the completion of her law degree to join Emmanuel Macron's La République En Marche.
Yes, I feel capable. Today I have the legitimate support of voters, so we're all going to get to work. It's important for civilians, people who have jobs, to be able to join the National Assembly.
Pierre Briançon, does she have, as she says, the legitimate support of voters, or did people actually just vote for Emmanuel Macron another time?
Oh, people absolutely voted for Emmanuel Macron. Every single En Marche candidate campaigned on the Macron platform, not on local issues or anything. They put the Macron picture on their campaign literature, and sometimes bigger than theirs, when they put theirs on the flyers and prospectuses. So there's no doubt they rode the Macron wave, and you can feel that in the fact that a lot of them actually got a higher percentage in the first round than Macron did in the presidential first round, meaning that the wave was increasing as the parliamentary elections come on. Now, this is no doubt, this is a purely Macronista crowd, and there's absolutely no denying about this. Whatever their age, whatever their background, they came here, they campaigned on the Macron magic.
Did that wave temper a little bit? I've seen, when you comb through the results of Sunday, that some Macron-supported candidates, well, they didn't fare as well as they thought they would in the second round.
There was a euphoria after the first round. You remember, you just noticed that everyone was expecting a 450 majority. So we were talking about a month ago, everyone was saying Macron cannot get a majority in parliament. And a week ago, it was like Macron will get a Soviet-style majority in parliament. So he doesn't get a Soviet-style majority, he gets an overwhelming majority. This is plenty enough for him to implement the platform, so it doesn't change much.
Davina Frau Meggs?
I think I would have a slightly different interpretation, because I think we are in a new cycle of politics, and what we're seeing is new circuits of validation and of legitimation of politicians that are not the ones that were here prior. So yes, it's Macron, but there's also a wave, an undertow there for a new form of government and even of governance, which means bringing in new actors that were not here before.
3/4 of the next assembly are freshman MPs. Yeah. What does that tell you?
What I just said. Don't underestimate the current, the undertow, because it's more than just Macron, the person himself. Again, as I said yesterday on your own channels, there's a question of character and of leadership, and Macron has been able to represent that. But you're going to need people to actually do the job, and he's got that.
Romain Duperret, the current constitution in France, it's kind of unique in all of Europe in that the powers are concentrated in the hands of the executive. Pierre Briançon mentioning on the campaign posters, sometimes Macron's head is bigger than that of the candidate running. And many people said, you know, I was listening to interviews this morning, oh, I voted for the candidate, I have no idea who that person is. So it is all about Macron.
I mean, Emmanuel Macron was the starting point of all this history which has changed France so much over the few last months. But I would not agree totally with what was said, because this lady, for example, this young lady, she's very legitimate in representing people of her age, which was not the case before, because you had a very unicolor form of representation at the National Assembly. Now you have many fresh men and women at the Assembly, which make it much more representative, much younger. And now we do have the means to actually put into action this same program we all have. Of course, we all campaigned for the same program, so no wonder why Mr. Macron's head was there. But now we have the means to put it into practice.
Benjamin Fournier, will a parliament, again, which is younger, with more women, will it be more legitimate than the previous legislature?
I really don't think that it's more legitimate because it's younger. It's great that it's younger. I mean, there are other factors, though, which are not taken into account. Being younger is great, but like
more people from civil society as well?
More people from civil society, whatever that means. Because there's like a lot of bluff, I think, on these new profiles. Supposedly they're new to politics. Sometimes they've never been representative, but they've had other implications in politics. And also the thing is, to be a representative of the people, I don't think being totally new to politics, to have never campaigned for anything, to have never been in debates is so great. And by the way, I do want to mention that the very low turnout, when you're talking about whether or not this new assembly is legitimate, the record low turnout is a very concerning fact to be taken into account.
You cannot say both, that they are not new to politics and that they are new to politics and they inexperienced. They're not.
Some are.
It's a total renewal, overhaul of the political personnel. This is unprecedented.
3/4.
You forgot to mention, or you mentioned the number of women. It was 25% in the last parliament. It was 10% of the Sarkozy parliament. Now France is ahead of all major European democracies on the number of women, 39% in parliament. So this is real. This is a new personnel, these are new people, and they are indeed very diverse, and so that's why it's so difficult to predict exactly what the parliament is going to work like and look like.
As for the abstention,
I hope we come back on the abstention.
On what factors, though? On what factors are they diverse, though? Because they're very educated, very rich. They come from a very limited pool of jobs. They're lawyers, they're consultants, and by the way, I mean, with this new ethics in
as opposed to mostly teachers in the last parliament, because that was basically
So what? So they're not more diverse.
The social basis of the Socialist Party was basically public sector employees and teachers. So let's not.
And we needed more diversity, which we didn't get.
They're much more diverse than the last parliament in that respect.
Cynics might argue, Romain Duperret, that in France, because there's so much party discipline, it's a landslide win even when you have a majority of one seat. Of course, it wasn't always the case under François Hollande. But does that mean that, again, one of the big questions people are asking is, will these lawmakers be their own person, like we see in the United States, where lawmakers don't always follow the party line, or are they just going to follow the orders from the Élysée Palace?
So the legal answer to that is that you can't bind MP to vote on a specific law. Article 27 of our Constitution say MPs are free to take whatever decision they want, and a political leader cannot say you will sign this bill or you will be excluded from the party. And I think in practice this will be very much of a reality, because these people, they do have strong personalities. This young woman was not chosen randomly. Of course, she was chosen because she was involved in whatever was her passion at that time. And she's not an exception. You know, they're not interesting because they're either young or women. They're interesting because they're diverse. And the very strong feeling we have is that Emmanuel Macron is only president for 6 weeks, and he has already changed so much in French politics. It's very refreshing and promising.
This is nothing new, though. We've had the frondeurs for 5 years, so being free to vote or not on a specific bill is nothing new at all.
He has made sure that he won't have a frondeur.
Frondeurs were these, just to explain to our viewers, frondeurs were these dissidents inside of the Socialist Party who broke ranks, most notably over the labor reform bill.
Yeah. So what do you make of that pledge, though, that candidates had to sign? So is it not binding then?
The thing is that many of us get involved in politics very recently because we found something new with Emmanuel Macron. And I don't think after campaigning so hard and so long, our first move will be to start dissenting from the power. We did take some commitment to the nation, and now we have the means to fulfill them. So our responsibility is to bring some ideas, of course. And I mean, I'm chairing a think tank, so of course we will bring some ideas, but we will not dissent for the pleasure of doing it.
Davina Frau-Meigs, I want to ask you just a point that was made by Boris a short while ago about the need for people who know how, as Winston Churchill would say, the sausage-making process of legislation. In Parliament, we've seen since last night, French television has been inundated with reports on crash courses being given to these newbie politicians on how to be an MP. What's your reaction when you see that?
Well, I think it's going to make us realize that civil society has changed. It's not what it used to be. In the old days, when you mentioned civil society, it was mostly thinking about NGOs that were doing things on the ground with people who were just goodwill people, not heavily trained. And from the 1990s on, politics in the world has changed, and civil society has become extremely professional, with a lot of professional help and support, like lawyers, for instance. And that, the origins of that is Greenpeace, which is to say every time civil society has been able to be part of the design of things, instead of just being the little hands at the end of the process. So I think what is going to be interesting here is to see how fast these people who are not blue, out of the blue, they have done things on the field, and they have some experience in their domain, are going to adjust to a process that is the process of parliamentary action.
They definitely need to learn the nuts and bolts of the parliamentary legislative process. What is the amendment process? They need to learn about the Constitution, the laws of the Republic, obviously. But they're not. I mean, it's not rocket science. The difficulty this time is that, as you said, 75% of the parliament is renewed, not only because of Macron, but because I think about a fourth or almost a third of them decided not to run again from the former parliament because of plenty of other factors than Macron being just an element of that. So the big difference is that it's a mass of people that you have to train into the actual details of parliamentary work, but it's only a matter of logistics. It's not a matter of intellect, it's not a matter of politics or anything. I think they learn, even though we reporters will have a field day and have a lot of fun in the first weeks.
They have a challenge, though.
All these beginners trying to learn how to be an MP.
They have a challenge because, in fact, the real challenge, I think, of the Macron era is to modernize all the political tools. And so they'll have to do something inside
political
Parliament.
Tools.
Well, the way we create laws, the way we debate and negotiate. Yes,
which we already started with the digital bill, for instance, that was led by Axel Le Maire and heavily consulted with citizens.
Exactly. And Macron is from that school, from the school that consults, in the sense that consults through digital. And who negotiates and creates multi-stakeholder.
Munir, the junior digital affairs minister, comes from the Socialist Party, so he should be good in that, right?
Oh. He's not junior. He's young, but he's not junior. He's very, very important.
He's Secrétaire d'État.
Yeah,
I know.
Coming from civil society, Pierre Briançon, I want to pick up on that point because Boris smirked a little bit earlier when we talked about it. This is France. In other nations, when you have a civil society, it's a civil society. In France, we have a left-wing Parents-Teachers Association and a right-wing Parents-Teachers Association. It seems as though politics is always a factor.
No, civil society in the Macron concept, which he developed very early in the campaign, even while he was an economy minister, is that politics is not a reserved profession like being an officer of the law in France or the protected or a druggist or anything. It is something that must be open to other people than the civil servants who have job security, who come to parliament, don't care whether they're re-elected or not because they still have a job waiting for them. He wanted people to take risks, to engage, and to have, again, diversification in terms of interests, ideas on how to manage or reform the economy, and so that's what he brought to the political process.
How do you how do you implement a policy with that? If there's a diversity in terms of how people see the reforms and how to, you just mentioned reforming the economy, how do you implement a policy with people like that?
Right, we're going to bring it up. We have to take a very quick break. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.